Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Roxanne, and if you're here, you know that it's Sunday and I have an analytical prediction video. So welcome back. My focus is on setting, and I've been focusing on my favorite setting of When Calls the Heart or in Hope Valley, and that would be the library. So I am going to discuss two scenes, one from season 6 and one from season 8, and they are related. And yes, I do know I made a mistake in my last video. Someone pointed that out, where the one scene was actually from season 7, the one that was between Elizabeth and Lucas, and she was trying to reach for the doorknob. That is season 7. I'm sorry. It's not that I didn't know it. I just said the wrong thing. I've looked at so much stuff. So I'm human. I made a mistake and I apologize. And thanks for correcting me. So this scene is definitely from season 6. It's the last episode of season 6. And it's very telling. This is more about Nathan than anyone else. So when they first enter the library, the townspeople, of course, Lucas and Elizabeth enter first. And Lucas goes right over to a table and he sees a book and he says to Elizabeth, who's also holding baby Jack, come here, I think he would like this book. So as they're standing in that little intimate section there, the camera focuses on them and they look like a family. And Nathan comes in with Allie. He goes over to a different section and Allie is so excited to show him not the books, but the bookshelves because she built them. And Nathan kind of looks over and he gets a nod from Lucas. And I know many people have analyzed this nod. So to me, the nod means a couple of things. One, Lucas is nodding to him because they had just come out of a scary situation in the episode before that where Nathan saved, Lucas's life as well as Elizabeth's life. And then they had that little meeting in the jail where Nathan's like, is there anything else that you need to tell me? He's like, no, we're good. And they shake on it. So it looks like they could start building a bit of a friendship. But then the very next episode, you see that Nathan is looking over at Lucas and he's realizing what he wants. Nathan wants a life with Elizabeth and baby Jack, and it kind of takes him by surprise. So he has that look and Lucas gives the nod, and it's also a nod that, yes, I want a life with Elizabeth too. We see more of that later on in the episode when he gives his little speech, and I addressed that. I'm talking about Lucas, and I addressed that in the last video where he's like, yes, he was attracted by her beauty, and we saw that when they were together in the center of town, but also the more he got to know her, he really fell in love with her goodness. So back to Nathan, he's having the same experience. Nathan has been all over. He suddenly had to become a dad to a 4-year-old. He is trying to make a life as a Mountie, and now he's stumbling into this town where he's like, oh my goodness, maybe for the very first time, he's developing feelings for someone. And it's taking him by surprise. So much so that he's not, right away, we get these little hints of it. He's not handling it well. And we could see that a little bit later on where there's that whole exchange with Allie trying to trick everyone and Opal gets hurt. And then, his jealousy comes out for Lucas, and Elizabeth actually defends Lucas. So right here in this scene, he should be paying attention to Allie, which he usually does, and he's not. So what happens here is that Nathan is distracted. His attention really should be on Allie because she is so proud about building those shelves. Even so much so if you watch the video clip, she's like, look, didn't I do a good job? Didn't I do a good job? And he's like really got his attention more on Elizabeth, Lucas, and baby Jack. And then when enters Bill, we know how Bill feels about Lucas in this season, and he sees his godson. He's like, oh, let me take my godson, where's the cowboy section? And he takes him away, and Elizabeth saw smiles, and she's still standing right next to Lucas. She doesn't walk away from him. Bill takes him over to where the cowboy section is, and that happens to be where Allie is with Nathan, and Nathan kind of gets this little smirk like, I've got Bill on my side. And Bill is very important to Elizabeth and baby Jack, so he starts to feel a little bit confident about it. But again, that's Bill being protective. That doesn't necessarily mean that's how Elizabeth feels. And as the story goes on, we know how Elizabeth feels. So I also wanted to point out here is that this takes place in the library, okay? This whole exchange, it could have taken place anywhere, but it's in the library because the library is how the relationship started to become intimate between Lucas and Elizabeth. And now baby Jack is there and they look like a family. It didn't happen by accident. We are seeing what's to come. And of course, this is the last episode of the season. And then you see how Nathan is handling it. He doesn't handle it very well. He's starting to get those emotions on his face. You know, you could see where he's a bit upset, taken aback. I think it's about everything that he's feeling. And he's still trying to figure it all out, plus be a dad. So it's not the best of Nathan yet. And as the seasons go on, I kind of think it gets worse before it gets better, which takes us all the way to season 8. In this episode, it's Nathan and Rosemary. Now, again, they could have had this exchange anywhere. And what happens is Rosemary's in the library researching some things about land sales. And Nathan, walks in to grab a book. And he actually talks about, even though she never says anything, she more or less says, oh, I'm surprised to see you in here. And he's like, you know, I do read books. And he lets us know how well read he is. And he tries to point this out because it is like a little against Lucas, because he's like, you know, I like books too. And he recognizes that that is what he thinks has been attracting Elizabeth to Lucas. Maybe in the beginning, but regardless of the books or not, she is very much attracted to him. There are things about him that she likes. And just the way that Nathan is handling this, again, it's more or less, you know, I'm not giving up, he tells Rosemary, I just can't do it. And Rosemary's trying to say to him, look, I have been in your shoes. So Rosemary, who had this whole history with Jack, who they definitely had a love for each other as children, their families know each other, so much so that they thought they would be engaged. Even when they finally get back together, there still is a chemistry there, there's still a connection, but it's not the same feelings that Jack has for Elizabeth. So Rosemary tries to talk to Nathan and explain this from her experience, but he already is like, no, I. He's thinking about how he feels. He wants this to work out. He's not thinking about the reality that Elizabeth does have feelings for him, but it's not the same thing. It is, and now if Rosemary and Jack had all that history and all those feelings and yet knew they weren't right for each other, even as Rosemary says this, because she knew that Lee was perfect for her. It's a level of maturity that Rosemary had to go through. And I think this is the same with Nathan. It's a level of maturity for him. He's still in the I mode. I just can't let her go. I just can't do it. So she gets that look on her face and she's like, you know, like he's going to have to learn the hard way. Now, what predictions do I have with this? Now, I told you before, there's only so many predictions you have to make and then you sound like you're cuckoo, right? So I've made most of the predictions that I want to make. We are coming down to the wire with filming, and this is what I think. This scene happened in the library on purpose for parallel reasons. So we had the triangle of Rosemary, Jack, and Elizabeth, and we know how that went. Now we have the triangle of Elizabeth, Nathan, and I was almost going to say Rosemary, and Lucas. So we have that triangle. So Nathan is like Rosemary. He has some growing up to do, and I think we're going to see that. I know it makes some fans upset. I'm not saying this like a negative thing against Nathan. I love his character, but this is how he was written, and rightfully so. When has he had time to like really grow up? He's had a crash course and he's doing the best that he can while being a parent. And Allie is extremely important to him. And we see that maturity because now he's made the commitment. He's adopted her. So we see that Nathan has to realize, you know, when you're in love with someone, you have to put their feelings forward before yours. And he's still in his I mode. I think he's still like, oh, loving the whole idea of being in love. And she is beautiful and she is a good person and she is wonderful with Allie. So he's wrapped up in all of that packaging. So we're going to see that package unravel, I think, in season 9. We're going to see that Nathan is going to mature, but we're also going to see something else. once that Rosemary realized that Elizabeth and Jack were perfect for each other and she started to find her perfect match, the relationship between Elizabeth and Rosemary grew. Now, some people say, oh, it wouldn't have been that strong because Lori Loughlin had to leave. I don't believe that. I always go back to the episode of when both of those women were there to give her support, Elizabeth, and give birth. And they had different roles and they had different parts in their lives. And I think Rosemary's relationship would definitely have grown. After all, they made her live right next door and they already started to build the relationship. It was just like more comedic with her. And I think that this is what's going to happen between Nathan and Lucas. I think their relationship and their friendship is going to grow. We're going to see Nathan mature. People who don't like Nathan's character, you should like his character. They're going to find him endearing like people found Rosemary endearing. And to be honest with you, Rosemary was downright mean, and Nathan isn't always downright mean and hurtful. So it's easier to love Nathan if you haven't before. So anyway, I think he's going to need a lot of help as Allie gets older, especially in this season, because I think there's a lot going on. I feel like there's an element of danger. I feel like he is going to be preoccupied. However, he is going to be preoccupied, or not preoccupied, more like occupied. He's going to have to reach out and need help. And what better people to help than the two main characters that all along have a close relationship with Allie. She has a very close relationship with Elizabeth, even though that has to be on the mend, and I truly believe it will. But also Lucas. I mean, how many times has the man given her advice or they've had interactions? It's the other adult that really has her best interest at heart. He even says this to Nathan, when they are out at the oil derrick and there's a little clash between them. And he's like, you better have your, best interests for both Elizabeth and Allie. So I see this as a sign, as a parallel with the first triangle with Jack and Elizabeth and Rosemary. And now I see it here. And I do truly, strongly believe that a friendship will be building. I have a friend, Kathy, who is wonderful at analytical predictions and just analytical reviews of all kinds of scenes that have to do with When Calls the Heart. She's been on twice. If you haven't caught them, here, I'll put this here and this here. Go catch them and watch them. She's amazing. She believes that they're going to be best mates or best men in each other's weddings, or like when Lucas gets married, Nathan will be his best man, or I think that's what it is, or possibly vice versa. But some people are like, no, it would be this person, that person, whatever. I kind of agree. I think that they will be, by the time one of them gets married, they will be in each other's wedding. Best mates or best men, I don't know, best man, but that's her prediction. So, okay, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week. You have a good one. Happy Sunday.